Is Michael online yet? Michael? Ah, there he is. Perfect. So first, I'd really like to introduce today's speakers. Leading the way is Dr. Michael Asibey, who's joining us directly from one of Ghana's top university. It's the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Dr. Asibey is an expert in urban development, environmental policy, and sustainability. He has done research papers, more than over 100, who were mostly published in high impact Q1 journals in urban planning and ecological management. And his research focuses on core topics such as environmental and ecological management, also sustainability, sustainable cities and urban boundaries, as well as adaptation to climate change and resilience. Dr. Osibey, I'm very, very happy to have you here live from Ghana. Very welcome. I hope you can hear us.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. And hello to you all. And it's a pleasure to be on this call. Thank you.
It's really great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. So, and next I'd like to introduce Sascha Thöny. He is a research associate at Fraunhofer, Austria, where he leads industrial research projects focused on sustainability in the manufacturing sector. And his work centers on the analysis and optimization of value chains, sustainability reporting, and the calculation of corporate and product carbon footprints, so that everyone can hear me. And you are also founding and board member of the SDG Alliance Liechtenstein, which supports companies and organizations in implementing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So as some of you in the room might know already, Fraunhofer and Refurbed has done many research projects together in order to calculate and also number the environmental and economic impact that European electronic consumption has on many different levels. So thank you for being here today. And last but not least, once again, I'd like to introduce Kilian Kaminski, on the one hand as the co-founder of Refurbed and host of today, but he's also a board member of the European Refurbishment Association, EUREFUS, and serves there as a chair of the Communication and Membership Working Group. And as you will very soon see, he's deeply invested in the creation of the European legal framework regarding refurbishment and also right to repair. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Great to be still here.
So maybe, I mean, we saw already a little bit on the documentary, but I'd like to get started with you, Mr. Thöny. Maybe you can draw a little bit of a picture for all of us here in the room, and then Dr. Asibey can join in on this. How does the travel or the life of a European device looks like? Especially you start with the part here in Europe. You've did some research on impact waste streams and waste stream flows, so maybe you can just shine a little light on that for us.
I mean, what we have to look at the beginning is that it all starts way before we get the mobile phone in our hands. So the mobile phone has a lot of history in it already. So we have the material extraction, we have different processing stages, we have refinement, we have the manufacturing, the assembly, which is all the stuff that happens before it even comes to us. And when we use the mobile phones, I would say in most of the cases, some of them do get refurbished, some of them do just land in the drawers, where they will be lying around for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years when we move and we realize, okay, we have never made any use of that phone, even though we thought that we could use it at some point. And then when we give it to recycling, we also have to see that in most of the cases, the phones or the electric devices do get sorted, do get recycled. However, there still is a big portion which either gets labeled as untested devices and gets shipped somewhere, or there's also, depending on which numbers you trust, around 2 to 5% of the electronic devices which vanish from the official lines, which we can track them, and which will just happen to be somewhere in an informal sector where sometimes they can cause quite some environmental harm. So that's from the side we did the research on.
And maybe Dr. Osibey, you can pick up on that a little bit. So we saw some of the impressions in the documentary before, but maybe you can say a bit more about what actually happens then when, like, out of sight of Europe, what happens to the devices, how in quantity and also in conditions do they end up in Ghana, and what happens there?
You're still muted?
Please unmute.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Claudia. Yeah, so at our end, what you see e-waste, so in terms of volumes, what we often find is that annually we have over 210,000 tons of e-waste items coming into the country. They come in the form of 100% of second-hand products. Yes, many of them are functional, which are of use to many users or consumers within the setting. But what we often see is that many at times they come in a form where you don't really see them as brand new items where you can easily operate them, but they come in different forms and different functions. Many at times have to take them to the repair shops for them to be repaired before they can be used. Although they come in the form of, yes, you can use them right from the onset, but many at times you cannot use them. They have to undergo some form of repair or recycling before you can use them. So that is how the picture looks like at our end, when it comes to e-waste items, depending on the type of or the forms of waste items you want to see. But just a little bit, largely e-waste items that come into the country are mainly in the form of household electronic items. So refrigerators, washing machines, mobile phones, and most at times air conditioners. So those are the major electronic waste items that come into the country. But as I said earlier, they often come with a shorter lifespan. Many at times have to go through repairs before they can be used by consumers at the household and at the business level. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So what I understood is that it's not only a matter of quantities that arrive there, but it's also how they are labeled and what conditions they are in and what can be repaired afterwards.
Exactly. Many of them come unlabeled. So you don't really know, when exactly they're manufactured, the lifespan of them. So they come in that form where they've been overused and you cannot really track the end of life of many of these items.
Mm-hmm. And apart from the environmental impact and also the economic impact that has, but can you say a little more, what does e-waste pollution actually look like in everyday life? I mean, we saw some of the impressions in the documentary, but maybe you can take us there a little bit of to the different layers of e-waste pollution that you experience.
Okay, so in Ghana, e-waste is not an abstract environmental issue. It is a child playing near soil contaminated with heavy metals or pollutants that are both visible and invisible. It is also, in terms of a picture, it's also like a woman selling food steps away from a burning pile of circuit boards. It is also like a river that no longer supports fishing because it carries the runoff from years of improper dismantling and dumping of unwetted items. So from 2020 till currently, my research works have documented how urban planning, what I mean by that is measures by city authorities to regulate activities of the sector, have failed to improve the conditions of many of these e-waste sites. And what we often see is that city authorities have failed to ensure a cleaner sector. And also many of these measures have been very poor. And so our planning system has not really caught up with the reality on the ground. And so what we see is that communities within which e-waste activities occur often occur in a vacuum. And so the hazards are documented, the policies are inadequate, and the people most affected are the least empowered to demand change. Okay, so in everyday life, this means that there's persistent respiratory illness in neighborhoods near many of these informal recycling sites. So there's soil contamination affecting food gardens, and also a generation of workers whose long-term health outcomes, they are things that we are only now beginning to track scientifically. So these are the everyday reality of e-waste management within many informal communities within the Ghanaian country. Thank you, Claudia.
So what we can really see here is it goes through all different levels, through the families, through food, like the working situation, respiratory problems. So we have it on all different levels, the impact of the e-waste. Okay. Maybe coming a bit back here to the root, to the cause roots of all of that. That is our consumption and the way how we treat devices, not only in Europe but in general in the Western world. What would you say, like from your perspective, what do Europeans don't see when they just, as Mr. Thöny mentioned before, like when we put a smartphone in a drawer, when we leave a laptop there for over 10 years, and
yeah, I think like last year we did a study with Fraunhofer as well on the topics about how many devices are in the cupboards of our households, and we specifically looked at smartphones and mobile phones. And the outcome is that we in Europe, we have more than 600 million smartphones and mobile phones in our cupboards. And out of these, 200 million can still be refurbished, and the remaining 400 could be recycled. And I think it shows that these products have so much value. Also looking at the internal materials, for example, the gold, silver, copper, lithium, so a lot of the rare elements that these products contain, which we also makes us independent from outside of Europe, specifically on imports and production side. So I think the awareness of people of the value of these devices, not just the physical retail price, but the value of the resources in the devices. I think this is something which we as a society really have to understand better to ensure that we have a motivation as well to return this product back into the circle and not let it kind of becoming waste in our drawers at home. So this is also something which we really try to emphasize, and hopefully also with the emotional story of this documentary, it also showcases a bit stronger how important it is to think circular and living a much more circular life, also with our day-to-day habits and how we're deciding on buying products, what we're doing with the products we already have. So this is also my hope that this awareness is also created much more in the future.
Speaking of emotional, I mean, since we saw you traveling there, and it was not the original idea to create a documentary out of it, but can you maybe say a few words, like your trip to Accra and to really go there and see for yourself? What impact did it have on your perspective of the matter? Because you've been in this business for quite some years by now, but what were the changes that came with the trip?
I mean, first of all, I was really happy that we had 5 minutes difference between the watching the screening and then speaking, because I was getting really emotional myself, and I was happy to not like showing this in front of the stage, in front of everyone before, because this was a really emotional trip, right? And I think from the whole team, but of course also from myself, we put a lot of effort, blood and sweat into this trip as well, because it is so different in the life that is there, right? And I think like we in Europe, we have no idea, or at least who had never traveled there, how people are living in these circumstances. And this was also, I mean, shocking on the one hand to see how people are living on these waste sites, like in the backyard kind of their facility where they're trying to repair products by hand. And this was shocking in one place, and also personally really emotional that we know that also we as Europeans are traveling there and we are one of the causes of it, right? And so this was really touching for myself. But on the positive side, I was really impressed about the dedication of the people and how positive they thought about the possibility of living a circular life. And this is, I think, also what I stated in the documentary shortly. For us, circular economy is more a branding exercise in Europe, like not for us as Refurbed, because I think we created the company 9.5 years ago because we really want to change the way people are consuming. But if you're looking on the general corporates across the globe, most likely the majority of them do it as an ESG activity, a branding exercise of looking greener in the future. And I think this is so different there, where they must live a circular life because it's depending on their livelihood. And this was, I think, something which impressed me the most, how dedicated and creative they were. And literally, I was so surprised of saying what you can do out of this material. I thought, like, for me, this is clearly waste. And they were like, no, you can do this and this and this out of it, and a shovel out of the back cover of a notebook. And this was something where I said, like, wow, that is something we have to implement in our European mindsets to really understanding circular economy is so much deeper. And we're just scratching the surface at the moment here. So hopefully also this will change a bit of the mindset in the future as well. And we really want to drive this as well with Refurbed.
So it really filled in some blanks about the mindset I can hear. Yeah. Regarding your impact research you did here in Europe, Mr. Thöny, are there some, like from the scientific perspective, are there some blind spots you could find in your research where you say, okay, like really clearly what we Europeans don't see when it comes also on a company level and then on an impact level? Maybe you can have some numbers for us to just give us an idea of where we scale at the moment with the problem here in Europe.
I mean, numbers is quite hard because it is really hard to find good, trustable data in that field. But like, to give at least like some numbers is, it was mentioned before already. Anyways, it was that if we have our phone in our hand and we are thinking to get a new one, we have all those environmental and social impact. We have the raw material which is needed, and if we just lay our old phone around in the drawer or something and we buy a new one, we'll trigger all of those impacts again. If, however, we switch to buying a refurbished one and giving our old one back, we decrease that to around 20%. So it's already a comparison of 5-to-1. So we can buy 5 refurbished phones, on average, of course, compared to one new phone, which is an enormous difference. If then, however, we also think about, okay, do I actually need a new phone, laptop, or device? We will decrease that down to 0%. So I think that is the thing we have to keep in mind. Buying refurbished is 5 times better than buying new. However, not buying and thinking before we buy can decrease that even more. So that is like that one number which really stuck to my mind and which I always have to keep in mind now when I use my phone or when I think about, do I really need something new?
So dealing with these kind of issues changes your own behavior as well. Yeah. So I guess this is also something that we hope to get out of this today's event in some point. Coming back to Mr. Asibey, do people in Ghana, like what we heard a little bit of the European perspective and the problems we are creating here, but do people in Ghana feel that Europe understands, like honestly understands the consequences you are dealing with? You can be honest here.
Yeah, frankly, I would say no, and it is not. It is not out of hostility, but out of experience. So many people feel that Europe does not fully see the human and environmental afterlife of electronic consumption. And so the workers that I have interviewed, the planners that I have engaged, and the community member that I have spoken with share a consistent feeling. What they say is that the problem is understood in Europe as an abstraction. Okay, so it is more of a policy discussion, a sustainability metric, and at times a documentary subject, but not as a lived reality. And so what we often see, that wealthier countries benefit from rapid technological turnover, while the environmental risk and the disposal burdens are more externalized to places such as Ghana. Okay, so there's a frustration about this framing. So Ghana is often depicted as a passive recipient of the problem that it did not create. And so you have communities here as active agents. They are trying to manage, they are trying to innovate, and they are trying to survive within a system that was not designed, with their well-being in mind. And let me just quickly touch on my research. So my research on, understanding the factors of this increased informal recycling in Kumasi and Accra shows that informal recycling, it grows not because of a cultural failure. Okay, it is because of economic necessity. And so it is a necessity that is in part driven by the volume of end-of-life electronics that flows from Europe or from the wealthier nations to our country. And so we find that people are not asking for pity. Okay, what they want is recognition, fairness, and also inclusion in global conversations about sustainability and circular economy issues. And so the question Europe, I think, should sit with is not why don't they manage it better, but I think what the question should be is why are we sending it at all? Okay, if we should provide answer to this, why are we sending these e-waste items at all? I think we better appreciate, how Ghanaians understand Europe. So again, I would say that frankly, no, we don't really feel that Europeans understand the consequences of this consumption within our setting. So this is me being very honest with your question. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you for being honest with us, because if we are not using this time and space here to have an open conversation about the issues going on here, then when would we do it? So, what, in terms of measures, what would you say? What is most needed for us Europeans to understand? What could have, like when we are here now sitting considering, what I heard before is we should not see it as a technical metrical system of sustainability whatsoever, but to see it's more personal. It has more to do with resources and with a daily livelihood in some parts of the world. What would be the measures that you would recommend that could have most impact for you?
Okay, thank you once again for the question. So as I mentioned earlier, what people or communities in Ghana want is not really asking for pity. Okay, what they really want to understand is that they should be recognized and they should be included in global conversations about sustainability and circular economies. I remember having a conversation with I think with Nick, that many a times within the European setting, anytime we talk of recycling, we are looking at these formal structures, okay, where e-waste goes through a well-structured system or process. And so, for example, when you upgrade your phone or replace your laptop in many European cities, you make a decision whose consequences you will never see. But in Ghana, these are the things that we live with every day. So for most workers, it's about recognition, it's about fairness, it's about inclusion in the global discussion about the components of these e-waste items, how to manage them so as to minimize the kind of impact it has on them, and also not really look at them from a side of pity, okay, that you're trying to do them a favor, but they are major actors when it comes to the whole e-waste sector. And so they should be drawn into the management and possibly even the production of some of these e-waste items. So that, I think, is the most crucial measure that could be implemented to address many of the issues that we find within our setting.
So that addresses a little bit the idea of the EU regulations you're working on, that it's not only a personal issue that we can solve with like personal change in behavior. This is one part, of course, but we also need different regulations. So what I heard from you, Dr. Osibey, is also making it more visible. And as far as I understand, this is somehow what you both are doing here. You're doing it with your impact research to actually calculate it and make it like flow it in numbers that we can understand what we're actually doing here. And with you, with the documentary trips like that, you try to make it visible.
Yeah.
But honestly, an honest question to you both here, and especially to you for the documentary, do you really think that just for people seeing a documentary, this will change how we consume in general and our attitude to it? I mean, I know it's a tough question, but yeah.
I mean, somehow is hope always great, right? But I mean, I'm also sometimes asked, do I believe that we can still win against climate change and fight climate change and, win against it? And I always say, if I wouldn't believe it anymore, then, why waking up and why standing up every morning, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I still believe that we have a chance of doing something. I think we have to act now. That is also why we're so active on the policy side, because there are so many regulations right now discussed on European level with the right to repair, eco-design, the Circular Economy Act, the new legislation framework. So a lot of different things which will influence the circular economy, or the way how economy is happening on the business side, if it's linear or it moves to circular economy, that we have to take action now, and trying to convince the politicians and the governments of changing the current behavior. And sadly, it's difficult right now to convincing them with the sustainability message and talking about climate change. So we're adjusting our messaging to independence, because this is now a really important topic on the political sides. This is sad from my personal perspective, because I would love that everyone also sees the climate change as the biggest priority to fight against. But if we still get the same result and a more circular life because the governments want to focus on independence, also fine for me, right? But we still have to change something to live a more sustainable life and enabling also businesses to live or to be more circular. So I think it was always hard, to create a total mindset shift in the society. But I also believe that with the Refurbed, when we started 9.5 years ago, when we started, nearly no one knew about refurbished products, right? This was not an existing product category. And now we have a proper third product category between used and new, directly next to new. And many, many people already know that it's much smarter a decision of buying is to buying refurbished instead of buying new. So I think we are already on the track. And I personally believe refurbishment is not a niche anymore, but it's this mainstream. And so I think we're already creating change, and it just has to further grow. And with the growth that we also have as an organization, we're now in 24 European countries. We are in 24 European countries because we want to enable every consumer to have an alternative of buying something more sustainable. And I think with these action, we, as the whole, speaking for the whole Refurb team here as well, doing our parts of creating a more sustainable alternatives since to buy something new and working on a more sustainable consumption. And this is why I guess like Peter and me as founders and Jürgen are really proud of what we are doing. And I also guess many, many of our colleagues, that is why they motivate so much to give everything for really creating something good for the world. And looking at the disasters outside, I think we need it and some positivity. So I'm positive that we can really change something in the good direction.
Thank you. And same goes to you, maybe in terms of like changements or measurements. What would you say, like, where is the hook from your profession, from what you learned throughout the years and the research projects? What would you wish, where is the angle where we can grab and address?
I mean, from the scientific or from the research perspective, we also discuss it at Fraunhofer quite a lot, because science has been trying to convince people for 50 years that we do overconsume, that climate change is a problem and all those things, and we've been bad at it. And we have to be honest with that. We're scientists, or also we have to say in general, most or quite often environmentalists are quite bad at marketing, because obviously the others were doing it better than us because we are in the situation which we are in right now. And I think one of the problems is that quite often when we see something bad happening, we will look at it and we think, oh God, that is horrible, and we should really change something about it. However, there's so many horrible things happening around us everywhere. I think I don't have to start mentioning some of them, that it will just fall to the back of the mind and we will start living our life as we've been before. But what we do think is where it will change the perspective is when we do not see it as something horrible happening, but as potential. So when we stop seeing the mountains there and see it as, oh God, there's e-waste, that is bad. When we start seeing the value of it and see the potential of critical raw materials, which have been mined, which have been processed, which Europe is in dire need of because we are really dependent on the imports of different countries. As soon as we start to shift that perspective and we see the potential lying around, then I think it will stick more to people's mind, because when you see the positive sides of it, it becomes just something different. People will want to act on it. And what we also saw that companies with that different perspective are way more interested and way more keen to go moves forward. So I think in that direction also, as Mr. Kwame, also as you said it before, I think that is a really, really important distinction and a step forward we have to make to start moving now already.
Mm-hmm. So as far as I understood it, this has also something a little bit to do with, number one, what you said before is like connecting the dots of different layers, but also what I heard today very often is this changing perspective, and this is what you described before from your trip to Ghana, right? Like how you look at something, we look at it, we see waste, and then how people in Ghana look at it and they have like thousands of ideas of what to do and what to get out of it. And I think that could be a good role model for us here. So maybe to just like sum it up a little bit, and I know it's quite hard with such an complicated topic, but maybe you can have like, after like going to Ghana and then creating the documentary, if there is one thing you would, like in one sentence, I'm challenging you now, you would like the Europeans to understand, Kilian, what would that be?
I mean, maybe really the phrase that I said. I think some people see waste and others see resources, and we should start seeing more the resource and less the waste.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And to you, Dr. Osibey, I hope you can still hear me. And we are very honored to have you here today. And you are not limited to one sentence, because I really want you to have the final say in today's discussion. So what would you ask to understand after watching the documentary, after listening to you? What would be important for you that we understand here?
Okay, yeah. So to me, I see e-waste as a mirror. Okay, so it shows us the true cost of our digital lives, who pays, who benefits, and who absorbs the damage. So the comfortable story about green recycling and responsible consumption often gets complicated when you look honestly at where electronics actually end up. As Kilian mentioned, I always say this, that waste is not waste, it is just an item at the wrong place. So anytime I see waste, I often see resource. Okay, so decisions about what gets made, how long it lasts, and what it costs gets made in the boardrooms and homes. Sorry to say in Europe. Okay, but the consequences land in neighborhoods in Ghana. And so again, e-waste is an environmental issue. I think it is also a social justice issue. It is an urban development issue. It is all three at the same time. And I think that any solution that treats it as only one will miss the point. So they need to look at it from an environmental perspective, a social perspective, and an urban development perspective. What I really liked was the whole documentary bits. Okay, that documentaries like this really do matter, so as to shift from a perception. To me, I think that if Europeans see this documentary, I think they will probably behave differently. You know, how to understand where their old electronics actually end up. So it is not a policy issue. It is not really about individual awareness. It's more of a systemic change. So again, I would just want to buttress this point that, again, let me just reiterate what Kilian said, and with my own phrase, that waste is not waste. It is just an item at the wrong place. Just get it to the right people, and you really see enormous resources and how people can innovatively turn these waste items into valuable resources. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you very much for that. And now coming back to all of you, maybe if there are any questions in the room, and also if someone does not feel comfortable with raising a question in English, it's absolutely fine to just say it in German, and then we'll translate it back to whoever it's addressed to.
Thank you for the presentation and for the nice documentary. I have a question. Shouldn't it become easier in Europe to recycle or to deposit old phones? For example, the thing you said that we all have them in the drawer. Usually what we did in the past was wait for the Ö300-Tüte and put it in there. But I think it's just not so... The people are not so well educated. Where should I bring my phone, my old laptop, etc.? And then also it's not so accessible then just putting back batteries to the supermarket, for example.
I can happy to start. So, I mean, I think like in general, it's a question like how long is a device in your drawer? So in first place, if you have to replace your device for whatever reason, hopefully do it with a refurbished one. But then if you have to do it, and then you should return it into the circle as fast as possible. And for example, for these we at Refurbed, we offered now a trade-in service. So the opportunity that someone can send back their old devices back into the circle and even get some money out of it. So this works amazingly for products which are 3-4 years maybe old. But if you're talking about your old Nokia, which is now 14 years in your cupboards or something like this, we sadly cannot purchase it anymore because it has no financial value, which would be high enough that it even would pay the shipping costs to ship it somewhere back. And there, I think, is a much bigger problem because the convenience factor in Europe of returning old electronics is often that you have to go to a recycling facility. These are often not at every corner, but at some places of big cities, not even like in small cities. And therefore, a lot of people say with small devices specifically, before I have to take the bus or public transportation and then walk and whatever, taking a bike somewhere, I just leave it there. And then we come into the point that you said, after then you're moving after 10 years and it's piled up, then you maybe decide, okay, now it's worth to bring this 3 phones, 2 laptops, washing machine in one go to the recycling facility. So I think the goal also has to be that we make this last step more convenient, that it's easier for people to bring their unused and old electronics to a recycling facility, for example, where then they can be reused or recycled and then the materials can be reused. This is a huge gap which is still there. And it's difficult to kind of cross outside of the policy side, because if we do not get, like, let's say, the majority of consumers, if they don't get money for it, they have less motivation of doing the extra effort. And I'm not talking about maybe some of here in this group which are really, environmental focused and they're willing to take the bike and drive this to the recycling facilities for 2 hours. But the average consumer, which sadly has not this mindset, and therefore we're still having a huge gap for these activities where I think the policy and the government has also to step in and creating much easier possibilities for people to return their old electronics.
Nothing really to add. I just would agree. It should be made as easy as possible because the burden is quite low or the hurdle is quite low that people would say, no, I'm not going to take the effort. So actually agree.
Thank you. I'm Sap Kovács from Green Sense Hungary. We do environmental trainings to B2B, so companies and also university students, about 1,000 students per semester. And recycling, circular economy is one of our main topics. And we're a little bit afraid because every time we have a workshop, there's always a question, if we stop selling new products and start moving into a repair economy, then our economy is going to basically collapse. So we cannot afford to do it. This is my first comment, and maybe question to you guys how we can solve it. And the second one is just the ease of life of Europeans. If I don't have a Mülleimer basically next to my door, but I have to walk 200 meters, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to throw it in the first one coming because I'm lazy. So is it policy? Is it a very serious sensitization of people to understand and see what's happening in Ghana? Although, in my humble opinion, they don't give a shit what's happening there because it's not my life and it's not concerning me. But how can we basically link these dots between making our life kind of as comfortable as it is now, looking at the economic growth to ensure that our children have a similar life as we do? It's really, really complex. And I'm not sure which one to tackle first or which one should be put most focus on. Policy, maybe a tax on new products, like a super high tax. If you want to buy iPhone 18 coming in September, it's going to cost you double as much as last year because there's just, there's your carrot or your stick to go in direction of repair. So just let's talk about this if you guys are open to it.
Maybe I will just start from my perspective. So the one thing is the tax you've been mentioning, and actually in research that will always come up at top of the potential measures to increase an environmentally friendly system would be an environment tax. So because
products downstream, they will create some environmental damage. If you add that damage kind of as a tax to products which are produced unsustainable, that would be a top measure. However, it is quite a complex problem, and there my knowledge or my depth of knowledge unfortunately isn't deep enough, because in many cases such a tax would burden the poorer population more than rich population, and that again isn't the right approach again. And so that is quite a deep topic which I unfortunately am not deep enough for myself. The other thing is with the wouldn't it destroy our economy if we would stop buying new products? I don't think so, and there are quite good examples and studies which prove that. One good example, I am from Liechtenstein, and there's that one company I like to mention. It's called Hilti. They produce drills and different tools for the building site. And what their approach is, they produce really high quality products with an extremely long lifetime. And they switch their business models from selling the tools to kind of leasing it and going to a pay-per-use business model. And in that way, the company themselves have a benefit of producing products which have a long lifetime, and on the other side have a lower environmental impact because they have to produce less new products and have are just like have the bonus if they put it, if they service it, if they refurbish it, and all that kind of stuff. So it brings a change of business model with it, but it does not destroy the economy in what I have seen and read so far.
I will just add some comments. I mean, first of all, I think looking at the whole economy piece, because we also get sometimes asked, like, our business model is refurbished products. What is happening if now no one buys new anymore, right? And I think, is it a problem because at one point you cannot refurbish anything anymore if there's no new products coming in? And first of all, I want to say that it's a great problem to have. I don't think that this is in the short term the reality, because currently the amount of refurbished products sold compared to new products sold is still minimal, right? It's growing, but there's still much more products produced new and sold new than refurbished. The gap can still be tightened up much, much further. Secondly, what I want to point out is on European level, we talk a lot about recycling. And I think it's also really important because we talk about waste. But what is really much more interesting is that how we can enlarge the lifetime of a product before it gets to kind of waste which has to be recycled. And there's a huge gap. Also on legislation side, if you talk about with policymakers, they're always looking at recycling. So it's really difficult to bring them to the point, okay, now we talk about the remains. And as I said about smartphones, for example, in the drawers, 2/3 can be recycled, 1/3 can be refurbished. But this also means that what are we doing with this first 1/3? And therefore also we have to create much more thinking about reuse, repair, refurbishment, all of these activities, which the right to repair now starts. But I think on the policy level, it's pretty far away. How we can motivate people of being more sustainable. I think one topic was environmental tax that was discussed. We can also, another topic is, for example, a lower VAT on sustainable products. So just that if you decide on buying something more sustainable, you pay less tax because it helps the environment and it helps you from a financial perspective as well. Something I think would be really, really interesting and should be looked at. Your example, which I had to laugh a bit because I was in a committee of the European Commission, an expert consortium, I think 2019, and there it was discussed if you have to pay a higher tax or like a higher VAT for the second phone that you own. So for example, if you have two phones, or like you buy a new phone and you keep your old but not return it, you pay a higher price for the new one because you now have two. If you return it, you pay the same price. That was kind of an idea that was walking around the room there. I mean, now 7 years, 8 years later, we can see it doesn't work out, at least from a policy side. But I think we have to also be a bit more creative to finding solutions here, because I agree, right? We as the average European citizens, I think we have a really strong convenience and are, I quote you now, sometimes a bit lazy of going the extra mile maybe for sustainable efforts. And this is also why I think there's a policy side, There's a business side, which has to create business models, for example, like Hilti, the example that you mentioned. But also we as consumers, we also have to do our part of changing, which means taking the extra mile of living a more sustainable life, consuming more sustainable. And we cannot just put our fingers to the politicians or to the businesses, but we are also part of this triangle. And therefore, I think it's also our own duty to change.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I want to add something to the documentary and the situation in Ghana. My name is Nana Alkunedu from Electro Recycling. I think I was part of the documentary. And what happened on Aburushi is we shouldn't underestimate the place. There's over $200 million that are turned over there every year. And I also say what they are doing there, it's right. But how they are doing it, it's wrong. But then there's also much politics behind it because there are materials that are moved from Europe, critical materials that I think the researcher said Europe imports them. And this kind of situation was done few decades back with China, right? And China knew how to close their, let me say, Aburushi, right? So it's not that wrong to see the place as hell on earth, right? There is a solution to that. The burning that goes on comes mainly from copper. Current price for copper about a tonnage is 8 to 10,000 euros. The people that burn the copper over there gets about $2,000 only. So the rest of the benefit goes to the middlemen. So we are putting a solution there to put up through a crowdfunding to put a shredder, less than 200,000. So people will bring their copper directly to the shredder, yeah, and we process it and they get the premium price. And so this is something that those situations can really be solved. But then it has become a playground, it has become a battlefield for, sorry to say, researchers, NGOs, development partners, to really talk about the problem. But the solution is there. So I think we should really look at the situation as the glass full, not than half empty, and I find a great thing Kilian is doing, and we get connected through Minimize Stefan, young guys, young entrepreneurs. I think they are young entrepreneurs in Europe that really understand the situation over there. But in the past, the story has been told from older generations, mainly from the offices, from their a big building, etc. But here is something that I'm seeing a serious hope that people are really in touch with the situation. So we shouldn't condemn it. There's much really politics behind it. And when they were in Ghana, I said, even we need more materials, we need more resources, and we can put really people to place, equip them very well, to really get the materials out. And I believe this is something continentally Europe and Africa can do. We can have the materials down there, recycle very well and send it back to Europe. But now, through the situation, all the materials goes to Asia. So Europe is really losing here by dramatize the situation in Europe. Thank you.
Maybe we can link that back. I'm not sure if you heard anything, because probably the translation from the audience to you back might have been a bit difficult. But what it was said, I tried to sum it up briefly, is that it would be good to think more in solutions, less than in problems. And it would be possible to bring all the materials to Africa in general, or Ghana, if there are more skills, more machinery, you correct me if I'm wrong, more skills, more machinery, more knowledge, how to proceed it. And then, which is important, to really get something out of it also in terms of economic benefit, not send it over like the resources that are collected in Africa and then sent to Asia, but to really keep the resources and the money in the country. Is that a perspective you would agree on?
Yes, I agree. I agree to that. See, the whole e-waste discussion within Ghana, it's a bit complex and cumbersome. Just as he mentioned, yes, I did a whole 2-year study on switching to these shredders or alternative ways of getting these copper things out. The issue is not really about the shredder. The issue has to do with time. You see, for many of these actors, time to them is okay. I think to all of us, time is money. So at times, what they say is that if it takes me about 30 or an hour to shred a ton of copper wire, okay, which is environmentally safe and sustainable, I can just put fire to these copper wires, and within 10 minutes, I get a ton out of it. Okay, so as he said, it's a whole politics, a whole environmental issue, there are a whole lot of things. So the solution, as I said, is not really tackling one thing. It's a whole chain, and really needs to carefully, look at that. If not, you end up providing a facility that will still not be used, and you go back. You again have to go back to them to try and buy them in. So yes, Claudia, I perfectly agree with him. But again, we have to look at it extensively to kind of come up with a very comprehensive or sustainable solution to whatever is happening. Thank you.
I'd say this is something that we all signed up today, that we cannot provide an easy solution and then say like, okay, we talked about it and it's all said and done. But it's just also like the documentary, right? It's a try to give some different reflections and insights on it. But I would say for now, if there are no more any burning questions, I'm pretty sure that the conversations will go on in a little closer circle. But I'd really like to thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us here today, for screening the documentary with us. Please spread the word and make sure that as many people as possible see the documentary. Thank you so much.